hello, everyone. We're live on the Eternal Life Plan show. And it's too bad you didn't hear the backstage studio conversation before we went live. We were having fun talking about aliens. And that's what tonight's topic is. Are UFOs demons? One Catholic sci-fi writer says, hold on a second. And we're really going to have fun with Patrick. So in the Catholic podcast world and with exorcist priests, they claim that ETs, UAPs, aliens are demonic. But is that true? Because the Vatican's position is a little different. The Catholic Church has no official dogma on extraterrestrial life, but top Vatican astronomers and theologians maintain that finding intelligent alien life would not contradict Christian faith. Why are these Catholic podcasters and exorcists saying something completely different? We're going to talk about this and more with my guest, Patrick Abbott, who is a Catholic first, a sci-fi novelist second, and he knows a lot more about this UAP extraterrestrial subject than I do. And I bet he can probably pronounce it better than I can too. So let's bring on Patrick Abbott. Thank you, Patrick.
Great being here. Thank you for that introduction. Happy to talk to everybody.
Oh my gosh, Patrick. So you have quite the background, and thank you for your service when you served in the military. So let's take the viewers back to, your time in Afghanistan. And was it Iraq?
Iraq once, Afghanistan twice.
Okay. How did you start writing sci-fi novels?
So really, I have to blame COVID because last deployment I had was 2019. And through various deployments, I and others worked embedded with foreign partners and also the Afghan military and the Afghan government. And it's such a unique situation, living, eating, sleeping, and intermixing your time with both the US side and foreign partners and the local nationals. And it led to a lot of interesting stresses, questions about loyalties some may even have on all sides. And I thought when COVID happened that I had a lot of free time of why not just write a book about the experiences, especially some of my friends who had PTSD. And DOD at the time said, nope, no way. But talking to a friend who also wound up later in the UAP sphere, he suggested, if you write a book and it's fiction, they can't stop you. And so I thought, well, I'll just write the story for myself and a sci-fi twist. And of course, the wife wants to see it, then a few friends, then some of the friends I served with, and everybody started messaging me back, hey, what's going to happen next in the story? And I kind of felt beholden to them. And one thing led to another. And lo and behold, I have 3 books in the series published. The 4th and final one I'm editing right now. And I also have a small collection of short stories that are religiously themed, taking on different questions and aspects of the faith in a sci-fi setting.
Oh, that'll be interesting. Everyone, Patrick's website is below. And before we dive into the subject, I want to take you to Patrick's Substack so you can see what it actually looks like. You really do have a lot of good information on there, Patrick. And I want to make sure that everybody can see what your Substack is all about. And there it is at patrickabbott.net. And this is when he was on one podcast episode. He's famous, you all. He's been around. So
quote unquote famous. And for people who might be interested in the Substack, I have just on that main screen, I have several articles that might be of interest. When you go to the homepage, the first one, the one that published yesterday, is Thinking Like an Analyst and How to Critically Think. And I use various sci-fi examples of just giving away how to think. The second story is looking at the legend of the giant of Kandahar and giants in Afghanistan,
Oh,
taking
yeah.
apart the what you might hear on Joe Rogan, that the sourcing doesn't
Mhm.
match up, but Afghanistan does have its own tale of a giant, and you might be interested in what the truth is. Then I have a review of Lord of the Earth for those who might be interested in that, and also a look at Kenneth Arnold, Roswell, and the term flying saucer, and just what might be interested people might be interested in that is when the term flying saucer was originally going on in the 1947 to about 1949 flap, most people didn't think it was aliens. Most people thought it was either US or Soviet technology.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, Patrick. I remember that. Um, yeah, okay, those are all great articles to dive into on Patrick's, and he has his podcast where he's been on podcasts here. I like his thumbnail better than the one I did for you, Patrick, but all right, I'll get over it.
And for
Um,
those interested on the podcast, the interview with Sister Allison Regina, she is a sister who writes vampire young adult fiction with a heavy Catholic take. So if you
oh,
have a
wow.
teenage daughter and she wants that sort of book and you want to make sure it's rock solid theology, check that one out.
That's a good share there. Thank you, Patrick. Okay. All right. So, it's like where to start? I have so many questions.
Well, I'll just get the obvious one out of the way so if anybody can ask. When it comes to the possibility of aliens, I share the same stated view as Pope Leo XIV and actually Monsignor Rossi, who believes it is a possibility that the theology of it is a neutral question. So we just don't know. I am more moderate than Padre Pio, who believed it was a strong probability. And I'm especially more moderate than Father Malachi Martin, who believed aliens have been visiting the Earth for at least 600 years.
And you're probably more moderate than I am too, because I believe they're already here and living among us. So
I am
that's my
open to all possibilities. Just show me the evidence. I have training as an analyst and through other careers, and it's just let's look at the evidence and sourcing.
yeah,
But
exactly.
I will not deny that there can be high strangeness out there. On my Substack, I even talk about my own and things my grandparents experienced once. So only a fool would completely dismiss things. I just call for let's rationally think about things.
Let's talk about what your grandparents experienced.
So it was about the 1970s, and according to both my grandfather and grandmother, they were sleeping in separate bedrooms on the farmstead in the Midwest at the time. During a sort of stormy day night, but not too stormy, there was a bright light that shone in through one window and apparently circled the farmhouse completely while shining in and then leaving. What struck my mother when she heard it and then me when I heard it was my grandfather was scared and actually hid in bed, and he admitted that. This is the same man in his 80s when later on, when he heard people stealing gas out of his gas tank on the farm, he ran out with a shotgun. So
Oh,
this is a man who doesn't scare easily. And when I was growing up, he was actually incredibly open minded about the possibility of UFOs and aliens because of that one incident. And also, he had a cattle mutilation on the farm that he took to a
oh, he
vet.
did?
He did. And the thing he told me was, and keep in mind, this is a farmer. So he's seen what
Yeah.
happens when coyotes get a live animal or when they scavenge a dead animal. It's rather bloody, even when the blood's starting to congeal inside. Not only were the cuts on the animal clean, the one thing that he told me that really struck with me was that there was no flies on the carcass. And what that meant, no idea, but it spooked him. So I don't deny the fact that there's high strangeness out there.
So cattle mutilation has been talked about on Skinwalker Ranch as well. And it's the same thing that you just described, and there were no flies or vultures or birds or anything coming around that carcass. Nothing. And it was strange what they took from the cow, from the cattle. And this just didn't happen in Skinwalker Ranch. This was happening all over the
Especially
world,
in the
just not,
70s,
yeah,
in the interior West. It even reached up to the Senate, and the FBI files are now have been released for a long time in the FBI vault online. And it's a strange situations. The organs that were missing were the soft organs, which would make sense for a scavenger: the tongue, the eyes, even the reproductive organs. But when a coyote or any other a vulture goes for that after an animal dies, it's not a clean affair. They rip,
yeah.
they tear. This was, I don't want to use biased terms, these were surgical cuts.
That's what they said about Skinwalker too. And it was very precise what was the parts that was taken from the cattle. So that's interesting that happened to your grandfather. Did it happen multiple times or just once?
Just once. My home state was a little bit away from the center of it all, but it happened. And it's just something that happened. And my grandfather was a strong patriot. One, he would sell any cow that if somebody just pulled up, hey, we needed testing. But if the government came to him and said, hey, your country needs some of your cattle, he would have spared some. So it was just confusing why somebody would go to his farm and mutilate a cow and then just leave the cow. That's the weird thing.
Yeah, right. Just leave it. Okay, let's talk a little bit about uh, your difference of opinion with Daniel O'Connor, especially in his book. I'll be the first to admit, Patrick, I have not read his book. I will not pay that man money. But I know you have read his
Yep.
book. So where do you differ with Daniel O'Connor?
So, minor point that the introduction actually, can, depending on how you read the word and can explain, only man is created in his image. That leaves the question: what about angels? You have because people kind of just put angels on the same sphere as God. They're created creatures as well. And from
Mhm.
St. John of Damascus to Thomas Aquinas to St. John Paul II, you have saints who believe, but without declaring it dogma or the only correct belief, that angels were created in the image of God. However, going to the actual point, what I fear is that O'Connor has bad argumentation. First, he bases a lot of the argumentation on the Antipodes debate, which was the belief that there could be no men on the other side of the world, because at the time, the early church, including at the time of Augustine, believed in Greek geography, that there were inseparable barriers of great deserts and great oceans, and that nobody could go between them. So the thought that if there were people on the other side of the world, that couldn't be possible because it would contradict the one creation. Well, we know that's
Hmm.
not true. Additionally, there is a lot of things that he misses or doesn't include in the debate. For instance, Abbé Monod, who was the famous French astronomer who published Cosmos magazine and also was really into the debate about the planet Vulcan. In the late 1800s, he obtained authorization from the Congregation of the Sacred Index to write a letter stating that there was no contradiction of the faith between or in the faith with the possibility of aliens. This was actually picked up, I forget his name, but the person who wrote the Baltimore Catechism also wrote a book called The Harmony of Science and Faith, which was about a lot of different aspects of science, but openly had, yeah, this is a real letter, and there's nothing wrong with the possibility of faith and the probability or possibility of aliens. Finally, There's a little bit of deception in O'Connor's book. In the book, he talks about the Padre Pio quote and claims to debunk it. He says it was published by an Italian hospital and that it's unsourced and whatnot. The book was published by the House of the Relief of Suffering, which, on one hand, is the name of Padre Pio's own hospital, but that's not who published it. That's also the name of the publishing house of the official Padre Pio prayer group, the lay people who worked with him all his life and collected those quotes and was the main editor, was the head of the prayer group. The book had a nil oblast and an imprimatur from a bishop. So that's deception. And between the deception, the lacking of sources, the argumentation that pulls from a different debate, and even how he handles other things outside the book, such as claiming no Catholic who wasn't a heretic believed in aliens as a fact before the Enlightenment. That's not true. Cardinal Cusa did. It's a compromised argument, and that to make up for that, he would have to address those points. But he hasn't. Instead, he doubled down on the Padre Pio quote. Recently on X, he had a video where one of the segments was, well, that quote wasn't sourced, so it's not real. I could make up a quote. Well, the source itself, or the quote itself, isn't sourced, but the book's from the people who knew him. And it's gathered from them as well. Additionally, he makes claims that are problematic. On one hand, one of his videos, either late April or early May, he starts it off within the first minute saying Trump has declared the date of disclosure and aliens.gov will be the website to reveal it. No.
Well, we all know that's not true.
Yeah, that was a troll. And finally, when the Monsignor Rossetti situation boiled down, he talked about, well, the Cardinal of DC must have gotten a letter, and it may have came from a place even deeper, implying that it was from a demon. And that this letter, many people in Catholic Inc. get. You're either basically accusing Cardinal of being involved in a satanic conspiracy, which is a dangerous red flag without direct evidence, or you're speaking in hyperbole to the point we can't take your word seriously. And you can't have a reasonable, faithful dialogue to find the truth if somebody is basically either off in the crazy zone of satanic conspiracies like that, or a clown just speaking in hyperbole.
Yeah, Cardinal McElroy was real clear why he fired Monsignor Rossetti, and the Catholic spinners, the usual crowd, spun that into something that it just really wasn't.
It was unfortunate all around. And in fact, Monsignor Rossetti was a member of my Knights of Columbus Council. I met him before.
Oh, really?
He's a good man. And while I disagree with some of his points of view, and I can get into that, it was just an unfortunate situation all around. And Monsignor wrote a very excellent letter apologizing and just wanting to move forward. And yet some people really want this to be a fight for engagement.
Yeah, it's just more clicks and views, Patrick, is what it is. And so they spun it for clicks and views. I thought Monsignor Rossetti's statement was very respectful. And I'm sure that disappointed a lot of people because they wanted him to be another Father Altman and fight back. But he didn't. He did what he was supposed to do. He was obedient to what the cardinal said, and he was obedient to the Catholic Church. And that's what...
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
And that's what we're called to do, is be obedient, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a good example of Catholics of good faith can disagree. And sometimes things can spin out of control, but it's always up to us to be that peace of Christ and heal those wounds.
Beautifully said, Patrick. Beautifully said. Okay, let's move aside from Daniel O'Connor and let's talk about some of the most prominent people that have been in the UFO world in the last couple of years. And we'll start with the Catholics that have been involved in all of this. And let's start with Dr. Diana Pasulka. Okay, she wrote, I think her third book, Other, is out now. But this is what upset Daniel O'Connor, Patrick, because I was saying that Dr. Pasulka is a professor of religious studies in a prominent university. Patrick is not. And she was granted access to see the Vatican archives. Patrick was not. So,
Daniel was not.
I'm sorry,
fine with
Daniel
that.
was not. Thank you. Thank you.
It's like, yeah, I'm not a professor.
Yeah, sorry. Patrick, I do that sometimes. So Daniel is not. Is Daniel a professor? Yes, he is, but he's a professor of a community college, correct?
I believe he is an adjunct professor in teaching philosophy in a community college in New York.
Okay, thank you. So Diane Pasulka came on the scene because of this man, and we'll get to him in a minute, Chris Bledsoe. So Chris Bledsoe and Diana Pasulka spent a lot of time together, and she did not originally set out to do UFO studies. She was researching the saints like Saint Teresa of Avila, and when she went to the Vatican archives, she found two interesting things. Well, she saw more than two interesting things, but two of the things she has talked about publicly is that in the actual Bible text, the word cloud was substituted for something that was referred to as a spaceship in the Bible. Instead of saying spaceship, it was translated into cloud. And she found this in the archives. The other thing she found in the archives was Saint Teresa of Avila. When she read her original writing, it was changed in the public version that Saint Teresa of Avila went into ecstasy when the angel appeared to her, when in fact in her diaries it said she was very frightened and that the angel pierced her in the side, and that was an interpretation that was taken out of context. Okay, so it started Diana on this journey of really studying UFOs and UFOlogy, and are we making this into another religion? Which I think she argues that it can easily be made into another religion, and I can see why. Now, she will not say, and she's connected with government officials and everything, she will not publicly say, does she think UFOs are real? Does she says they're a possibility. They're a strong possibility. But she has not seen an actual alien. She has not seen an actual spaceship. But she has retrieved fragments of a spaceship where she was taken out with Dr. Gary Nolan to this search in Arizona, I believe, and they discovered fragments of something they couldn't identify, and they had it analyzed, and it was material that was not of this world. So that's why she's leaning towards that. Do you know anything about this conversation, Patrick?
I'm tracking. I have healthy skepticism. I'm not going to call anybody wrong because it requires my own testing and whatnot. Just from I guess, a skeptical standpoint, a lot of, as I mentioned before, I'm an old guy. And in my parents' library, they actually, amongst many, many, many books of different points of view, had a lot from the Jesus Seminar, who had the historical Jesus books. And I remember reading one article, I forget who wrote it. It's kind of frustrating, I can't remember. But it was, well, the term cloud with Jesus' ascension was wrong because he just went up into a cloud up top a hill because it was really cloudy and the apostles didn't know any better. So I'm familiar definitely with the translation debates. Additionally, I have done retrieval of flying objects before, all very much terrestrial. And you would be surprised the things we find that we go, oh, this must be the airplane, or it's something completely different, or it's an alloy from someplace completely unexpected, or it was a meteorite. With the ghost rockets, which were probably Russian modified V1 rockets over Sweden in 1946, people
Oh,
found pieces of what they thought were ghost rockets all over Sweden. Every single one was either a meteorite or just old metal lying around, and that people argued about different testing and whatnot. And so I have that skepticism of just some of the things she believes in. I'm not going to call her wrong because, again, how can I call her wrong when I demand evidence when I don't see the evidence myself? It's just something that I would just advise for skepticism. But she is right in the sense that we underestimate the high strangeness of Christianity itself. A lot of
mm-hmm.
times things like Celtic Christianity is completely misunderstood. It's a hippified version of Christianity. But actual Celtic Christianity from the English Isles had the concept of thin places where our reality and the preternatural world that was still created, but just beyond our reality would meet. So you had stories of Saint Brendan giving Eucharist to a mermaid who wanted to be Christian. Heck, even in early Roman Christianity, you had Saint Jerome talking about Saint Anthony in the desert meeting a satyr and a centaur. Both expressed a Christian form of view, and so we're trying to get back to that enchanted Christianity. And she is right. Some people make it the UFO high strangeness its own religion, but there's other podcasts like I Might Believe in Fairies and whatnot that talk about if you go to the actual original sources of Christianity, there are things that just blow our secularized post-Protestant Reformation mind of, did they actually believe this?
I forget that man's name. The one that talks about fairies.
Oh,
Um,
Aaron, I let
yeah,
me.
yeah, he was on. So I love the Y Files, um, Patrick. I love the Y Files, and AJ interviewed him on his podcast called The Basement, and it was a fascinating interview about this man's theories around fairies.
And especially with how we understand fairies, a lot of myths were mixed into Christianity, either dismissed as demons or accepted as these are just other created creatures in the world. And the fairy concept is specifically European, but other religions have similar concepts. The Muslim world believes in jinn, which are created creatures in this world who can be bad, can be good, can be neutral. Some believe in God. And that's where we get the concept of genie from, these jinn. And so the world is a high, strange place in many religious traditions, including Christianity.
I'd like to bring this comment up from Father Bill Fox, how much of that do we see in the Golden Legend, i.e., St. George and the Dragon?
So, and what if you argue that it's just a myth? You go, okay, this is Christianity taking myths of the pre-Christian world and showing how Christ wins. But again, I wasn't there. Who knows what actually happened? We There's a world that where Jesus did walk that had demons everywhere. There was a world that, especially in the Old Testament, the ancient Hebrews, there were creatures out there, Behemoth and Leviathan, and so maybe there was a creature out there. It's just a question that we don't know. We put faith in God, and then sometimes the truth is actually just so surreal because in Russia, there was a legend of basically a wild man, a Bigfoot like creature, and that locals near Tatarstan constantly talked about, oh, there's wild men in the hills, wild men in the hills. In the early 2000s, some Russian cultural geographers went out there just to document things of Tatarstan. And locals were, not only was there a wild man hundreds of years ago, but we buried him in the village and he's right there. And they thought, oh, wow, let's dig it up and find nothing there. They found a corpse. They did DNA
Wow.
testing. And the truth was there was, in a sense, a wild man. It was a sub-Saharan African. And probably what happened was that there was a person through the slave trade in the Islamic world, ended up in Tatarstan, tried to get away, tried talking to the locals, couldn't communicate, and just locals remembered him as a wild man. So when it comes to St. George and the Dragon, while it may not have been a classical dragon with the wings and fangs and claws, maybe it was. Maybe it was another creature. Maybe it was a creature, just a normal iguana hyped up by demons into a giant beast. Who knows? But on one hand, you can say, well, the myth teaches us that Christ conquers. On the other hand, if you want to get into the historic, maybe we don't have evidence.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Good point. Okay, let's bring in Catholic David Grush. Okay, David Grush was, I think he was the first whistleblower, wasn't he not, Patrick?
He was the first one who really got big. There were people like Lou Elizondo beforehand who talked about the programs. David Grush was the first one who really went out there and said, I have heard these stories. Let me go in front of Congress and talk.
Yeah, he testified back in 20, it's either 2023 or 2024.
I think
And
23.
was it 23? And he has come out and has said even more lately. And it's been amazing that I think they're just tired of the government suppressing information because these tranches, which we're on, I think, tranche number 5, it still isn't telling us the full story, is it, Patrick?
I'm fascinated by these tranches because I especially love looking at the historical ones from the 40s and 50s, and there's a lot of good research material. Uh, it's sort of in the sense like the FBI files being released on the assassinations and whatnot. Some people think that the grand conspiracy is going to be revealed, and had that in early May. But what you're getting is pretty much how most of the government runs. You're getting
Hmm.
files, and it's a lot of, hey guys, I heard this report, and I take it down. When I was in Iraq and Afghanistan, anything we were told by the Iraqis or Afghans, we had to write down in intel reports. There were even comment sections where we had to comment if we believed it or not, because we heard all sorts of things. I heard about Osama bin Laden running around in 2019. So there is a report just from me, a geographer working with the tribes, about bin Laden's allegedly in this village in Zabul. He was not. But I'm convinced somebody's going to leak that file and people are going to be, look, it's proof he's alive.
So, when you were in the military, because these sightings seem to happen a lot around military bases. Did you ever see any UFOs at all, Patrick?
Did I see UFOs? No, I saw a lot of drones. I saw a lot of meteorites in the atmosphere in Iraq and Afghanistan. I never saw what would be considered a flying saucer device. Uh, Before my worldly adventures, there was one incident where I saw a truly strange purple light when I was a kid. Later on, I saw images of what ball lightning looks like, and
Mhm.
that's ball lightning. However, in my own youth, I had a strange experience where I had the sensation that I needed to run or hide. And I don't know if it was a voice in my head or just the sensation. So I did. And there was an incredibly loud noise then after I hid. And then it left. And I remember I had like a eagle's nest, almost like a tree house that's built into the ground and on stilts. And I remember the canvas flapping. And afterwards, I did talk to my mother. Hey, did you hear something? And she was, oh, yeah, I did. And she went back to folding laundry. And it it struck me as weird and disturbing, and I didn't speak about that. And that was kind of my own personal experience with high strangeness. So I'm not eager to dismiss claims of something weird happened. And in fact, a lot of times in Iraq, something weird happened out in the desert. There was an explosion or a firefight. We had no idea what happened. We had
Yeah.
no idea who was firing at who, but something happened. And so it's that sort of life where I try to assess things in different buckets. And sometimes I have to accept, I don't know.
So, what is your opinion about David Grush?
David,
Because I know we don't agree on this.
he broke my heart. And let me tell your readers why. And this is actually a very Catholic explanation. One of David's big original claims was that in 1933, a bell shaped UFO crashed in Italy, and that when World War II happened, the Vatican helped secure the bell shaped UFO and then gave it to the US, who had the bell shaped UFO and tried to reverse engineer it. That was the first major warning sign with me with Grush, because one, we both know if the Vatican had a UFO, that isn't staying secret. I mean, think about all the scandals our church has unfortunately had to go through. We can't keep those secret. We couldn't keep a UFO secret. Both foreign spies, the press, cardinals, it would have been all over the place. And then you have more open popes like St. John the 23rd, who would have probably talked about it and used it in theology. The second thing that really about that is I know where that claim comes from. It comes from a 1996, I think, Italian fascist UFO files, which are pretty much regarded, even in UFO circles, UAP circles, as Italy's version of the Majestic 12 documents. That it's a hoax, that it was some people in UFOlogy trying to up other people and also make other people look bad. And it's you get that a lot with UFOlogy, both people just trying to say, look, I have something special. And you have people like Richard Doherty, who was a
Yeah.
former Air Force security officer who intentionally spread stories of UFOs to UFOologists and normal people to get them off the trail of real technology. And Paul Benowitz was one of his victims and basically driven insane because instead of letting Paul figure out that he's seeing the stealth fighter being developed, he fed Paul information that there was basically aliens captured and held in the mountain, and that some were good and some were bad, and that there were battles going on and only Paul could help it. Paul went insane and it ruined his life, and he died soon after all that, and it wrecked his family. And that's kind of the danger too of UFOlogy. If you keep it as an interesting niche, it's great. It's something to think about. Some people, as Diane did warn, some people really get into it and it can ruin
Mhm.
your mind.
Yeah. Even Bob Lazar, if you all don't know, I don't have a picture ready of Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar is connected with Area 51, but he didn't really actually work at Area 51. He worked at another site around Area 51 called S4. And Bob Lazar, this goes all the way back to the 80s, and Bob Lazar um, claims that he helped reverse engineer an alien ship that they had on site, and they were using it to reverse engineer so that we could use the technology. Now, I find Bob Lazar credible myself. Patrick, I'll get your take on that. Um, but I know that he was connected. He's been discredited because he claimed that he had a degree from MIT and he did not. And like David Grush, I give David Grush credibility because I think he was wrong about that fact that you mentioned. And, people get things wrong. I've gotten lots of things wrong, and I've come back out on this podcast and admitted it and corrected it. But for the longest time, Bob Lazar hesitated giving interviews because he didn't want to be accused again of saying something that was false. And Bob Lazar, he's one of the pioneers of really getting out the alien spaceship stories. So, what is your take on Bob Lazar,
So I
Patrick?
know there's a lot of controversy over some of his claims, especially on his past and what he was doing. Uh, a lot, again, I can't test it because I don't actually have his records or whatnot. The claim about alien technology isn't being reverse engineered is always interesting because people will say, well, look how fast we evolved from, say, old records to CDs to digital. And is that it? We don't have warp drives? As a person who's dealt and seen helicopters crash, and also with the Iran war of the Iranians shooting down our drones, losing those pilots over Iran that thankfully we rescued, the stealth fighter being shot down over Serbia in 98. Is that the extent of the reverse alien technology? It kind of just, when you think back where we were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, at the time we thought we were really advanced. But we realized no, our technology had a lot way to go. And in fact, I have a Ukrainian military friend who joked with me when the war started in Ukraine. Well, we know UFOs aren't Russian technology because if they did, they would have adapted Zelensky by now. So
Mm, But don't you think, though, Patrick, you being in the military, um, when you served in the military, don't you think, though, that there is all kinds of technology out there that the public has no idea about? And
there's
we do
definitely
that for national security reasons.
there's definitely carpentalized. Oh my goodness, I can't speak today. So there's definitely advanced technology and things like that. And we see it rolled out 10, 15 years later for the most part. We're getting really advanced with lasers, things like that. But I've also seen military technology where they go, oh, IEDs are ripping apart our Humvees. Let's just put scrap metal on the doors. And
Mm.
if we could reverse engineer alien technology and supposedly fly it into the stars, I would hope that we could stop pipe bombs that are being made in a garage in Iraq. So it's something that I'm not going to completely dismiss. It's just I'm skeptical with the actual stuff I've been seeing. Uh, we have really good ground penetrators, but as we have seen with Iran, there's some places we haven't tested yet because it might not go that deep. We were defeated by the Taliban, who had very little advanced technology. what we view as advanced technology is a generation above what the Chinese and maybe two generations of what the Russians have. But all things considered, if there's alien tech that we have that we can reverse engineer, there's a very big delta gap in between.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All righty. I want to get to Russ Coldhart. He is an investigative reporter for News Nation,
Mhm.
and he's mostly been talking about the age of disclosure through the government. He's interviewed a multitude. He's interviewed Jake Barber, David Grush, Michael Brown, Dylan Borland, um, Chris Bledsoe. Trying to think who else. A lot of people. But I want to play this clip for you,
Okay.
Patrick. And this is about Chris Bledsoe, because I know you and I disagree on that. Um, and I want you to hear what he has to say. So I'm going to set this up for the audience, okay? So if you don't know who Chris Bledsoe is, he's right here. This is him. He came out back in, was it 2019, Patrick, on Skinwalker Ranch when they analyzed him being able to communicate with orbs?
So it was pre-COVID. So it might have
So
been
it probably
2019,
was.
but it was the long, long ago for me.
Yeah, yeah. So I do the same thing. I always think of before COVID and after COVID. But he has been on every podcast out there talking about how orbs are a natural part of his life now. He sees them all the time. He says a prayer. He asks the Holy Spirit to reveal himself to him, and these orbs appear. And he believes that these orbs are spiritual beings, they're not aliens. So he has a little different take on all of this. Why do I believe in Chris Bledsoe? Because he describes seeing the lady, which he has said, he knows Catholics call her the Blessed Mother. She looked like the Blessed Mother statue. And this is why I believe Chris Bledsoe, because the lady has appeared to him every year, I think since 2012, I think. She appears every year at Easter to him. And he described the lady exactly like the two times the Blessed Mother appeared to me when I was 16 and when I was in my early 40s, when she appeared to me. He described her the very same way. And actually, when I heard him describe her, Patrick, I broke down in tears because I went, finally, somebody else is articulating this, because I have been mocked and ridiculed by Catholics for my visitations and for my near-death experience. Now, I don't ever talk about any messages I receive. I'm not a seer. I'm none of that stuff that Patrick O'Connor has accused me of. I've never claimed those
Daniel,
things.
I hope you
I'm
don't give me.
sorry. Daniel O'Connor.
It's all
Thank
us
you,
Irish
Patrick.
names. We're all the same to you.
Yeah. Well, Harrington's Irish too, so.
We're all the same to ourselves.
Yeah, so Daniel O'Connor has accused me of being a false seer. I have never claimed that, never said I ever was. But the way Chris Bledsoe described the lady, now he's not Catholic, he is Baptist, I believe. It brought tears to my eyes because I went, finally, somebody else is talking about this. So, I wanted to show you who Chris Bledsoe is before I show you all the clip, and the clip that I want Daniel, oh my gosh, Patrick.
Just call me Artemis. That way we have it right here for you.
I feel like, Patrick, I'm the mother that goes, Timmy, Jimmy, I mean, Sandy.
Everybody needs a little levity on a Thursday night.
Right. So I just wanted to show everyone Chris Bledsoe, if they weren't familiar with him. He wrote a book called UFO of God, which I have back there on my shelf somewhere with Diana Pasulka's books. Those are the only alien books I have. UFO books I have are from those two authors. But I thought Chris was kind of thrown under the bus because he made a prediction that didn't happen. And so everybody's going, see, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a false prophet. I've never called him a prophet, first of all. But I want to show you this clip, okay?
Okay.
So let me do that.
Interested in this because of the predictions of Chris Bledsoe, who's been predicting increases in meteoric activity. Chris is a very well-known UFO experiencer. We've had him on the show. He's never made specific public predictions about an increase in meteors or fireballs. His core prophecy, and he's given this in various interviews, including with us here on Reality Check, is about a major celestial alignment around Easter, April 2026, involving the star Regulus appearing red on the horizon in alignment with the Sphinx at dawn. But that's nothing to do with this anomalous meteor activity, at least anomalous levels of reporting of meteor activity. Unfortunately, sadly for the conspiracy theory, the levels of meteors are pretty much the norm.
Well, Ross, it's almost like you know how I stacked these questions because you teed me up perfectly for Nate Austin. Ask if Ross thinks Bledsoe's trip to Egypt this fall has anything to do with the new discoveries being made out there. Seems like quite the timing.
Oh, no, it definitely does. No, Chris has been invited to Egypt by the Egyptian Antiquities Authorities, and they've asked him to be present, firstly, for a major upcoming announcement or release of information tied to ancient discoveries under the pyramids or the Sphinx. And it's something that Chris has indicated as potentially rewriting history, which is quite exciting. But apparently this is directly linked, this invitation, to the prophecy he received from the entity he calls the Lady, sometimes associated with Hathor, a divine feminine figure. And in interviews that he's done with us, Chris confirmed that he's actually, no, it wasn't with us. Actually, it was with AJ Gentile on the Y-Files. He confirmed that he'd been invited to Egypt, but he did talk to us about their prophecy. And he talked about how it's got a long-standing connection to the prophecy that he talks about in his book, UFOs of God, which I'm actually just finished reading. Chris has stated that the alignment event will mark the moment when new knowledge enters the world, and the Egyptian authorities' planned disclosure appears to align with that message, which is intriguing. I wonder what they know at the Egyptian Antiquities Department. They are not known for their transparency or openness, I have to say. There is talk in UAP and spiritual circles of a possible gathering or event at the Sphinx around the time of this time frame that Chris has predicted. And it is specifically tied to his prediction of a Regulus Sphinx alignment. The core prophecy that he, I think, first shared privately with government officials about a decade ago, and he's been talking about it more recently, including with us in the last year or so, is that when the star Regulus, I've written this down because I wanted to be sure about it, appears red on the horizon in the direct eastward gaze of the Great Sphinx just before dawn, it signals a profound shift, a change in humanity's knowledge, or the dawn of new understanding. And Chris has long connected this celestial event to potential revelations about ancient history, lost civilizations, and broader scientific, spiritual awakening. Now, he has corrected the date. Originally, and this is what he told us in the interview he did with us when I spoke to him at Contact in the Desert in May last year, originally he estimated that this would be in Easter 2026. And everybody jumped on him and basically said, oh, he's got it wrong. He's rewriting his prediction because he knows it's not going to happen. But to be fair to Chris, what he's acknowledged is he took astronomical advice from astronomers, and he's since explained that there was a miscalculation error by the astronomers that he consulted before he went public. The refined calculations now place the precise alignment, Regulus rising in the Sphinx's gaze just before dawn, at the 7th of October this year at approximately 5:30 or 5:50, sometime in that period, AM local Egyptian time. You can't get more specific than that. Originally, there were estimates of late August, which is what Chris said to us, has said more recently. He also talked about Easter. But with the new astronomical predictions, he's talking about the 7th of October. So the Egypt trip is not a random trip. It's an invited role that Chris has seen as the fulfillment of a prophecy that he first spoke about in 2013. And the date shift from, I think, spring to autumn of this year has been openly addressed by Chris himself as a correction based on better data. I don't think he's hedging his bets. I actually think, to be fair to Chris, as we all do, we often get things wrong and we correct and move on. So that's what he's done. And good luck to him. I hope it all comes true. Wouldn't it be fantastic if there was a spiritual awakening in humanity? God knows we need it right now.
Okay, Patrick, what are your thoughts on that?
I love deadlines because we'll be able to tell or not. I'm a little bit worried with the changing of the dates. That reminds me of the family radio. I think the world's ending in, 2011. Then the pastor moved the dates. But it's like Medjugorje, that they've set a time frame, whether it's a variable time frame of somebody dying in the case of Medjugorje without there needs to be a great sign, or with Chris that let's see what happens in October. It'll be great. I'm skeptical of Chris, especially because he claimed that in April this year there'd be orbs that would come out of the ocean and help stop the Iran-Israel war. That didn't happen. But you know what? He's set the date, so let's test it out. Pizza party on me. And
Well,
I'm serious about that. You know what? Let's make it fun. We don't even have to do a podcast, but on that date, I'm going to set a reminder, and you can email me what pizza delivery service you like. I'll send you a gift card. And we'll either eat to the great new knowledge that is revealed, or eat to, hey, at least we know.
Yeah, exactly, Patrick.
And either way, like, you get pizza. So if you're right, or if Chris is right, he's right, and you get pizza. And if my skepticism wins out, at least you get pizza. So it's a win-win.
I'm glad you're not making me come to Washington, D.C. And audience, I will not be going to Egypt on October 7th either.
Especially October 7th is kind of a day now in the Middle East you don't want to go to. But if anybody wants to send me to Egypt, I am more than willing to take your donations. Always wanted to go.
Really?
I am fascinated by, so I'm also a history buff. I could never write either historical fiction or real fiction just because I could never live up to what should be done. History is so valuable. Going to Colonial Williamsburg is my happy place. But history, both Roman, Ancient Egyptian as one of the first civilizations that we have solid records about is just so fascinating to see how that society quickly developed and how it changed over time, and in how many ways it didn't change.
Yeah, and you know what, Patrick? So, do you believe all of this uh, controversy around the pyramids, that there's something underneath the pyramids, that the pyramids weren't really burial crypts, they were something more?
So this reminds me of my favorite movie, one of my favorite movies, Stargate. So I could never put Daniel Jackson down. I honestly, I've seen some of the press reportings that there's something there, that there could
Mhm.
be something there. I've seen some of the counterpoints of scientists saying that those systems are wrong. It's truly something where you need and I mean this honestly, an open mind, because even science itself can shift radically without without it throwing the baby with the bathwater. Because growing up, when I was a child, it was all about Clovis first, that there could never be anything of human population between before 13,500 years ago in the Americas. It was heresy. And if anybody even proposed it, they were banned basically from archaeology. Well, then Meadowcroft happened and other things happened. And it was, whoa, we're talking 20,000 years at the latest of population. It might even be earlier. And going back to my parents' great library in the basement, one of the books they had was a geology textbook from well before even my mother's time. It might have been one of my grandparents. It dismissed plate tectonics as
Oh my.
a theory, like just a ridiculous theory. Now you can't get through plate tectonics even in the third grade because it explains earthquakes and volcanoes.
Well, I think it was Dr. Stephen Greer who said if you took a cell phone back to the 1500s or beyond, and you showed it to them, that they would say that that is a demon, because they can't wrap their heads around, just like the platonic plates. It's like they can't wrap their heads around that this is possible. So therefore, it's either not true or it's demonic.
Well, it's interesting you say that, and it almost goes into the stereotype that we were talking about of some people, some Christians thinking we live in such a demon haunted world that, especially in Protestant Reformation Germany and England, yeah, the Puritans are going to call you a devil. You show up with that in Italy or Spain, they're going to go, where did you get that? How can we trade for that? And how can we make gold? That we forget that in the areas with especially contact, the Catholic areas contact with non-Catholic areas, there was an exchange of ideas. There's a reason why the Renaissance happened in Catholic Italy. There's a reason why the Greeks never had a dark age like the rest of Europe did. There was a little bit of stagnation, but they never regressed like we in the West did. That Christianity has been open-minded, and some people will be like, "Whoa, that's fascinating," but then you get people who just see something and absolutely think it's magical. To your point, are you familiar with the cargo cults?
No.
So
Explain that.
this goes back to the topic of UFOs and people making religions out of it. In World War II, we went to islands in the Pacific, and we were local natives were who knew of the outside world but never really experienced it. Maybe a couple missionaries or seeing a boat in the distance. With bulldozers, we went in and carved up their ancient primordial forests and landed planes. It blew their
Mm.
minds. And to be good guests and not have a local rebellion on their hands, we gave them things like Coca-Cola, cigarettes, pots and pans, cool things.
Healthy things.
They live good lives. Extra rations, bread, things like that. Then we left, and it was, hey, where did those cool guys go? And you had natives going, well, how do you get those cool guys back? And all of a sudden, you had people starting to claim they met John From or John from America, who told them that if they copy what the Americans did, the cargo would return, which they called
Oh
the good
my.
things. And so you
Mhm.
had natives starting to chop up forests and just waving their hands like they saw Americans do. We were bringing down planes to land. They didn't really know what they were doing. They understood the general concept of what was going on. Well, the 1950s happen. National Geographic and anthropologists show up and go, wow, this is kind of sad. Let's take some photos and give them some nice things. And the natives were, we knew it. It worked. And you can look it up today. And if you want some interesting images, people, look up cargo cults. You'll see Pacific Islanders dress up as American soldiers, march in formations, make planes out of grass wicker baskets. And it's become their religion. And it's actually a
Oh,
counterpoint against the local tribal religions. And it's even used against the Christian missionaries that you have your God in the sky. We have the cargo. Our grandparents saw the cargo, and we still do the cargo cult. And look at these tourists. They bring us stuff. It works. And
how
so,
interesting.
and so some people might say, well, UFOs, people see it and then they start questioning God, therefore it has to be demonic. With people's not understanding great things, whether it's seeing a cell phone and thinking it's demonic, or just seeing planes for the first time and World War II going on in the background, we can't wrap our heads around epic things without putting it in the context that we know. And many times we put it in a religious context,
Mhm.
even without the possibility of demons being involved. And people can go astray that way.
Well, we do that in the Catholic religion too, Patrick, because, people are so, we'll just take praying the rosary, for example. It's almost become a superstition for some people that they've got to get their rosary in for that day or something's going to happen.
It's a
Something
good
bad will
example
happen.
that we can make idols out of anything, even
Yeah.
good things. You had the ancient Hebrews with the snake on the bronze serpent. That it was a
Yeah,
good thing
exactly.
that took away illness. They made it into a god. You have people who might Saint Joseph statues put upside down to sell the house. You had a good thing, a Saint Joseph statue to remind you of the virtues and to pray. Well, now you've used it as an idol. And so anything can be an idol, and that's can be a danger of UFOlogy, that some people do take it too far, but then again, some people can take anything too far.
Yeah, that's right. You're exactly right. Um, Patrick, we haven't touched on Dr. Travis Taylor yet or Robert Bigelow. But we're already past an hour, and I may have to have you back for another episode. I would love to have you back. Now, if you can just take some comments that we'll get,
Okay.
and we're going to go to break to give you a little break here, and it's a minute long, Patrick. And then what we'll do is we say a prayer, a Hail Mary, and then we get into the comments. Okay.
Okay, I have my fridge right there. I'll quickly grab a drink and I'll come back once we go on break.
Okay. All right. Everyone, stay with us through the break, and we'll be right back. All righty, we're back. And thank you, members only, for supporting this channel. I really do appreciate it. And we will have soon, I think it's going to be next week, that I'm thinking about doing a live members only just for us, just for our little membership. And be looking for it next week. Okay, Patrick, could you lead us in prayer real quick?
Of course, in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. God, please enlighten our minds and souls to always do your will, to focus on the most important things, to love, to work for peace, and to adore and worship you. Amen.
Thank you, Patrick. All righty, Dan, comments. Do we have many comments? Jack Kennedy, Christ's ascension was on some sort of craft. We can only wonder. What are your thoughts about that?
The man, God, who could raise himself from the dead and can walk on water, can do whatever he wants, whether that's through a craft or through his own supernatural power. So if we want to say it's a craft, we would have to look for positive evidence that the traditional understanding of him ascending under his own power is somehow wrong.
Yeah, thank you. Jack Kennedy, if Christ walked on water, he can fly around UAV, let's be honest. Well,
He can do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
Again, it's the miracle wasn't that he had a hoverboard that he summoned into being, but he himself was walking on water. So again, it's the sort of, we have already given thesis. If we want to go down the road of an antithesis, we should have evidence to work with that.
Well, let's stay the more obvious, and that is Christ resurrected.
Yep. We're talking about the man God who can be born of a virgin, who can die in 3 days, rise again. So as I told a friend once, if that happened, you're having a problem with this small thing in the Bible. It's
Right. Splitting hairs there, Patrick. Okay. Believing in aliens is
Rosicrucian garbage.
Thank you.
So there are Rosicrucians who believe in what we would consider more interdimensional beings, possibly even demons. Jacques Vallée, who's famous in UFO circles, who had a character based on him in Close Encounters of the Third Kind and also advised on that, was heavy into Rosicrucianism. However, there are Catholic thoughts about the plurality of worlds and things like that before Rosicrucianism was a thing in the 1200s. Bishop Thiers in Paris, he pretty much destroyed Aristotelian thought in astronomy, brought in people who thought aliens were a possibility while still doubting that they existed. And again, you have people like St. Padre Pio, who believed in the probability of aliens. Of interesting note, St. John Henry Newman did not believe in the possibility of aliens, but he in fact complained that the possibility of aliens was such a given in many Catholic circles. So it's a more traditional thought than what most people think. It definitely predates Vatican II. An interesting concern, though, that some people like Mr. O'Connor and others will bring up is that, the aliens are part of a biologist plot to make you think life can just start at whim elsewhere and just bring down your faith in Christianity. Evolutionary science actually led to a decline in the belief of the possibility of aliens in many parts of science. Because before that, when astronomers dominated science, they would say, look at just all the possible stars and worlds out there. There has to be some that have aliens. It was sort of a given. But then when you had the rise of evolutionary science, they combined that with astronomy to say, look at just what all the conditions to be perfect are needed to form life. You just don't get that in many other areas of space. So you had more people doubt that the situation that made life on Earth could exist elsewhere in space.
Well, the other thing that I always go back to, Patrick, is why did God create such an immense universe if we're the only ones occupying it?
It leads to the interesting question, because if there's life elsewhere in the universe, how great is God? And the heavens proclaim his glory even more. If there's no life outside besides humans and the angelic, how great is God and how much it celebrates us more? You have some people that say, well, if there's alien life out there, that takes away from Christ's story on earth and it diminishes everything. And I would say not, because even the Bible itself focuses on the Jewish people in the Old Testament and the church in the New Testament. Israel, the land of Israel, the Jewish people in general, were always a sideshow compared to the great empires in China and Europe and Africa. Part of it is the reason why the Bible is so special is what sort of savior comes from Bethlehem. It just adds to the emphasis of we were such a backwater. So I have no problem with that concept.
And Dr. Phil has said this. Well, a bunch of people have said this, that the White House is afraid of releasing everything because how will that destroy people's religion? Well, in a way, it wouldn't have any effect on my Catholic beliefs at all. If an alien, if a little gray or a tall white was standing right next to President Trump or a reptilian and they're shaking hands, I wouldn't go, oh my gosh, there's no God.
It would be it'd be an earthquake for some, but not even getting political. Let's be honest. If Trump could cement his reputation in all of humanity for being the one who could do disclosure, I would assume he would, based on just what we know about him. Again, not getting political. So I would think, as Nick Pope, the former British MOD investigator on UFOs, that if anyone were going to do it, it would have been Trump.
However, Ross Coulthart had said in one of his interviews, I think it was with UAP Gerb. Do you know who he is?
I know of him.
Yeah, I can't remember his real name because that's what everybody
his Twitter handle
called him. Yeah. Ross was told by someone close to Trump, and of course, he's a reporter, so he's going to keep his sources, that the reason why Trump has not come out and talked about this is because he has been told if he does, he will be killed.
That's an interesting claim, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. That's what Ross was told. So I don't know. Who knows? And like I have said over and over again on this podcast, we don't know what they are. We don't know. But that doesn't mean they're demons, and it doesn't mean they're not real. We just don't know.
It could be any sort of combination of many things. The issue of aliens and UFOs can be solved separately, but if we want to just call it high strangeness, could there possibly be demons trying to fool people along with everything else? Sure, but we would need evidence of, hey, is this demonic activity? And as I told you in our pre-interview, the only Marian apparition that dismisses UFOs as demonic was Our Lady of Bayside, which is not a church-approved apparition at all. And Garibaldi, oh man, I wish I could speak. This one in Spain, Garibaldi,
Garabandal.
Its own reputation. The interesting thing on that is, in a letter between two Spanish priests, one of the priests who was working with the alleged seers said, oh, yeah, they said Mary told them aliens were real. Meanwhile, in Medjugorje, one of the tests they gave Mary right away was, hey, are aliens real? And the alleged response was basically, that's not for you to know right now. Pay attention to me. So if we can have any signs of demonic, that would be interesting to test. There was one priest who claimed doing the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit sign of the cross would make UFOs go away. That was Father Michel Rodrigue, who
Yeah.
obviously is compromised. Monsignor Rossetti claimed he knew about a woman who had a gift that could look at photos of UFOs and say that was a demon. Well, if that was the case, I would like to see, hey, can we have an independent study? Maybe show her some photos of truly unexplained things and photos of things that were later explained, seeing if she can be accurate with everything. That would be an interesting thing to test as well. But then you have alien abduction claims, which not everybody believes. And some people say invoking the name of Jesus works. Others say it had nothing to do with the abduction and didn't stop it. And then you have people claim, well, it only works in certain cases. Well, then you have something that works 100% of the time, 50% of the time. So that's a useless data point.
Yeah, the alien abduction, um, Whitney Strieber has a very interesting take because he claims that he was an alien abductee. And then there's the whole hybrid program that's supposedly kept secret. Patrick, do you know anything about that?
Oh, yeah. It goes to the great fear of basically sexual violation. You had sort of that in the Betty and Barney Hill case.
Yeah.
But interesting thing about that, Betty Hill, she, despite ignoring what happened to her later in life with her mind, she doubted many other cases. And so that's an interesting data point there. She thought a lot of it was social panic, and that she was upset that people weren't taking her seriously because every other case. And the stories about hybridization, again, it's how do we know this? We would have to look at the sourcing. And it also kind of feels almost like Nephilim stories that some Protestants will tell about alleged demons and people mating. And so I think that goes to a deeper fear in humanity about sexual violation, because one thing that really strikes me about UFO claims, if you look at both the history in general and specific claims over time, is how they grow. And it's almost like they need to get more and more extreme as things go on. You had nothing like that with the contactee movement. You had nothing like that with the original abduction movements. It's really something that happened in the 80s with its own social turmoil. And then, coincidentally enough, when CPAP machines become popular, there's almost a direct correlation with the decline of UFO cases and sleep paralysis. So,
Really? That's interesting. I had not heard that.
if you look at trends over time, UFO cases alleged reporting have collapsed. And additionally, many in the UAP communities shy away from the stories because a lot of it just gets crazy and contradictory. And you have things like the alleged Greys who are different in almost every case. Or before Close Encounters of the Third Kind, you had many other different types of aliens. There's definite social influence going on at the very least with how people remember.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, that's interesting you said that about the CPAC machines because the near-death experience phenomenon increased once medical advances to be able to resuscitate people.
Yep.
And so after their resuscitation and they came back, they were able to tell their story. because I died during childbirth during an emergency C-section. And on the other side, Patrick, I know I haven't shared this with you. On the other side, I was given a choice to stay or come back. And when I died with mortal sin on my soul. I cried out to God for his mercy, and he brought me to him. But I didn't experience him the way we were taught as kids what God is. And I keep, ever since that near-death experience, I keep asking myself, what, not who is God, but what is God? And we haven't talked about Dylan Borland, who is a Catholic, a convert. He converted to Catholicism. One of his interviews he did, and he hasn't spoken a lot about this since, but he said what shook him the most was what God is. And when after my near-death experience, I kept asking that same question, what is God? Because I experienced him as energy that washed through me. And of course, the Catholic Church teaches that God is not energy. And I experienced this warmth and unconditional love, like nothing negative could be in God's presence. Nothing negative could be in God's presence. So I experienced him way different than what we were taught. Now, am I saying the Catholic Church is wrong? No, I'm not. I'm just saying what I experienced. That's all.
And I think it's... Oh, go ahead.
And since the advent of resuscitation, more and more people are coming out with their near-death experience stories. And of course, people have been resuscitated that never had one. You know, that happens too. So go ahead, Patrick.
And I would say, just to add to your point, we have models that we can understand the greatness of God. And the best model we got was Jesus. But even through him and his incarnation, we can barely understand the concept of a Trinity, let alone what exactly God is. And that's part of the beauty of communion. I pray for when we die and are able to go to heaven, of just getting to see such a greatness. And that one of my favorite saints, Thomas Aquinas, everybody really loves his theology and philosophy. And then he had his vision of heaven, and he goes, my stuff is worth a straw. And that's what I actually love best about him, that we can have concepts, and they can be good concepts. But what is beyond not only God himself, but just in the universe in general, even in the created world, beyond our comprehension.
Yeah, it is. I mean, honestly, and I just saw one tiny slice of the afterlife. I didn't see everything. I just saw one tiny slice. But meeting God was, I mean, my gosh, you know, a lot of people think that's it is a blessing, but every day since, Patrick, I've thought about it. Every single day I have thought about it and wondered, what didn't I remember that happened? Because I was in a coma for 4 days after, I came through, and it was came to, and it was 4 days later. And that whole thing, my son died, I died, and they were able to resuscitate us both. So, you know, crazy. So Patrick, any parting words you'd like to leave for the viewers?
So I'm going to go through a couple questions, just really quick, lightning round, then I'll have my last word. For the person who asks about cattle mutilations just beyond our understanding, or is this bad guys? Some of it might be wild animals, but if you listen earlier, my grandparents had a cattle mutilation. Don't know. It's really weird, though. For those, for the same person who asked about crop circles, are they benign, but the farmers suffer loss? Crop circles are an interesting history. The first crop circles were created by people who later confessed. So that's an interesting thing. What is it, a social contagion that other people just copied? And then finally, a person saying, I had sleep paralysis involving demons when I was angry. Yep. Sleep paralysis. I had one episode once. It's a very intense, frightening experience. So remember always to pray. I will say, just as a parting plug for myself, patrickabbott.net. If you go to my books, you can get for free An Odd Pilgrimage, which is about a time-traveling old believer Orthodox monk. You can get A Wick in the Wind, which is an apocalyptic tale about basically a Protestant community in a sci-fi setting. Or you can get the Savannah Paranormal Detective Agency, which is a Catholic, almost purgatory-like tale about strange things in Savannah, Georgia. However, my main series, Fallen, is a military sci-fi that combines Catholicism, experiences of Iraq and Afghanistan, and aliens. And I hope you check out some of those, even if it's just the free books.
Patrick, thank you so much. And I want to encourage everyone, if for those of you that were jumping on late, let me take you to, whoa, shoot, I took your website down. You can follow Patrick. There it is, right down there on the ticker. You can follow Patrick there, and you can buy your books there too, right? And they're on Amazon.
They're on Amazon. If you just go to my books, there will be links either for the free downloads or links to Amazon for the books to buy.
Okay. Well, we definitely want to support you, Patrick, and we appreciate your time. So, everyone, you know how I end. Eternal life is forever, right?
Amen.
Got a plan? You better have a plan. And your plan should be Jesus. God bless you all, and thank you. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you for having me.